Hey budget gardeners, Vida Loca here. Join me today as we start some seeds and also do a mini seedling tour. So let's go. Today is January 15th and I did start some seeds on my own. I didn't film it, but I thought it would be worthwhile to take you in just to show you some of the things that I've started. And I figured we might as well start some seeds together as well. Right behind me are my grow lights that I put together a few years ago. And I made a video recently showing you my process for creating the grow light stands similar to the ones behind me. So if you haven't checked out that video, definitely check it out. And it's not too late. It's actually a perfect time to start thinking about what you want to plant, how you want to plant it, if you need grow lights, how you're going to put them together. So I definitely think now is the best time to be thinking about all of that. And I can't stress enough, each of our gardens is very different. Some of us have big yards, some of us have very small yards. Some of us have lots of land to be able to plant huge vegetable gardens. Some of us need to garden within container pots. Some of us have a lot of sun and some of us have a lot of shade. Lots of different factors to consider. So when you're watching videos such as this one, please get inspiration and ideas and don't get discouraged. Because no matter what you do in your garden, even if it's growing one type of flower or one type of vegetable, in my opinion, that's a victory. And each year that we garden and we learn from that experience, that is a huge thing in itself. So I will be reminding you of that as much as I can during my videos, because often I have to remind myself of that same exact fact. Okay, so the first plant that I want to talk about is lettuce. I've had so much luck growing lettuce indoors under grow lights. I have grown it outside in containers and pots and raised beds. I like it, but I don't love it because it's, to be honest with you, a little bit of work for me to go out there, pick the lettuce, and then especially clean the lettuce, each leaf very carefully. And when it's indoors, it's just so much easier to just cut my lettuce and give it a quick rinse and it's ready to eat. So I really enjoy growing lettuce indoors under my LED shop lights. And the first type of lettuce that I grew this season is called the Gourmet Blend. And I planted this on December 29th. So it's been a couple of weeks. And you'll see in my videos that many times when I start plants from seed, I'll plant them in a container similar to this. This is just a regular to-go container that you can get from a restaurant. And I have all different sizes of them. And I put drainage holes in the bottom of them. I just drilled holes in the bottom. And it works for me. I like to plant a ton of seeds in here and then transplant them and put them into 6-packs. I find that it saves me a lot of room up front under my LED grow lights. And then it gives me something to look forward to, something to do when it comes to plants growing inside of here and pricking them out and putting them into their own little 6-packs. What I also like about this method is, as we all know, not every seed is going to germinate. And especially if you have a packet of seeds and over time the seeds are less and less viable, it's kind of a waste if you put 6 seeds in here, or even if you put 2 seeds in each cell, that's 12 seeds. I feel it's a disappointment when only half of them still come up, or even less than that. So I prefer to prick the seedlings out of this type of tray and then put them into their own little 6-packs. So I didn't plant a ton of lettuce seeds in here. I've learned from experience that I really don't need 30 or 40 plants going at once under my grow lights. So right now I have about, it looks like 18 plants going, which is still a lot. And they're pretty small right now, but they're doing well. And in a future video, I will show you my process for pricking them out of these 6-packs and putting them into a bigger container. And I will also show you in a future video my process for fertilizing these seedlings. They still have a little ways to go. I'm going to wait until I start seeing some roots in the bottom here. And at that time, I'll make a video and show you my process for bumping these up. And I wanted to take you in just for a closer look so that you could see what the lettuce looks like. They're just starting to get their true leaves on there, which is their second set of leaves. And they're really cute. I just think they're so adorable. They're starting to look like actual lettuce plants. So I love begonias. I love wax begonias. I love tuberous begonias. And in previous years, I've had a lot of luck growing wax begonias, which are also known as fibrous begonias. I've had a lot of luck growing those from seed. And I've made a video showing you how to collect your own seeds from a begonia plant. And I even made a video showing you how to plant the seeds. The begonia seeds need light to germinate. So when you plant the seeds, you just want to barely have it on the top of your soil. And even though I planted these seeds a while ago, it is not too late. It's only the middle of January. If you haven't already planted your begonia seeds, now is the time though. You definitely want to get started because they take a long time from planting them until they bloom. So in this container here, I have it labeled and it says wax begonia. It's a white colored flower and it has a large leaf and the leaf is a green color. And I planted these on December 29th and it's been a few weeks since I planted these. And what I'll do is I'm going to put up on the screen a close-up shot of what the seedlings look like. They are super tiny. And for right now, what I'm doing is I'm just bottom watering these seedlings. I don't dare spray them or mist them because the seedlings are very tender. They're very small. And it definitely in general anyway, when it comes to watering your seedlings, you want to water them from the bottom. And then what happens is the water wicks its way up to the top. And the bottom of these trays have holes in them. So what I do is I just place this whole container into another container that has a solid bottom. And I put water in there. And I put probably about 2 inches of water. And I just wait until I can see that the container is pretty heavy. And then I know that the seedlings have gotten enough water. And I've been watering them about, I'd say, once every other week. And you'll notice that I did keep my saran wrap on. Normally with bigger plants, I would have removed the humidity dome, if you want to call it. I would have removed that off by now. But for right now, I'm leaving this on because the seedlings are so small and the seedling mix dries out so fast. I don't want the seedling mix to dry out as fast as it could be drying out if I was to remove this saran wrap. So I'm leaving this on right now. It does not seem to be affecting my seedlings. This is what I do every year, and this has worked for me. In this container here, this is labeled tuberous begonia, and it is a light yellow. It's a tall type of tuberous begonia, and I planted these on December 25th. And I will also put up on the screen a close-up shot of what these look like. These are definitely harder to see. It's easier to see the seedlings of the wax begonia. So I'll do my best to get in a closer shot of these seedlings, just so you can see what they look like. And it's the same exact process. I'm leaving this saran wrap on for right now. All of these plants are under grow lights at this time, and I'm bottom watering these seedlings. So this is the bottom of a cherry tomato container that I got from Sam's Club. And I kind of thought it was fun. I thought it was neat. I could use it. I'm always looking for ways to save money and reuse or recycle items. And I'm just using it as a mini humidity dome for some plants that I'm trying to root. And these are plants that I collected in Main Street in a town close to me. They were in a big pot and they were really, really pretty. I think they're called a wire vine. And so I have the wire vine behind me and that I took cuttings off of from that container on Main Street. And I rooted them in water. They're in a pot. And then they got bigger, so then I took cuttings off those. And instead of rooting them in water, I'm just experimenting and I'm rooting them in seedling mix. And so these are also just staying under my grow lights as well. And here's the wire vine that I was telling you about. So I was able to get 4 pieces, which is nice. And where I clipped them back just to take the cuttings, I noticed that they're already branching out just barely on the sides, which is exciting. So my plan for this plant, I really don't know much about it, is I would love to grow quite a bit of it if I can. And I'd like to put it in my hanging baskets or window boxes or pots. I think it would look really pretty. When I saw this plant on Main Street, it was really a huge vine. It was just flowing out of the pot. And what I liked about it is that it has like a red and also a green, the leaves are green, but then it has the red tinge on it as well. It's really, really striking. So I have, I will find out more about this plant and I will see if it's even hardy in my zone. So my goal is to grow these plants out, use them in my landscape, and see if I can overwinter them again, which I should be able to hopefully. And I'm almost positive that I probably could have overwintered this plant in my garage. My garage does not freeze, and I'm almost sure that this plant is hardy to zone 7. So if that's the case, it should survive in my garage, even though I live in zone 5B. So I will play around with this and experiment in the fall. But until then, the goal is to grow these on more. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the equipment that I have. I already talked about the grow lights a little bit. I will mention that the grow lights come on about 5 a.m. every day and they turn off around 9 p.m., which is plenty of time for the seedlings to get the amount of light that they need. And I have everything hooked up to timers because it just takes away that part of having to plug the lights in and unplug the lights each day. So I highly recommend a timer if you're going to set up your own grow light system. This right here is called a 10 by 20 tray. And the reason is it's 10 inches this way and 20 inches this way. And a lot of times nurseries will use trays like this. I really like these trays. I got these from Ocean State Job Lot, and I've also bought them on Amazon. And they usually cost a couple of dollars. Some people complain that they're flimsy, they break, but I've had these trays for years. And you know me, I'm all about budget. I think there's some really beautiful sturdy trays out there that are some of the trays look beautiful, the pots look beautiful, but with the budget that I have, I just, I know all of this is an investment. All of our trays and our pots and everything we buy, the hope is that you can use them year after year. What I find is if you take very good care of whatever supplies you buy, even these ones that are fairly inexpensive, they should last you a while. That's at least been my experience. I'm very good about cleaning them out at the end of the season, disinfecting them. I try to be very gentle with them. I try not to put very heavy things inside of the trays. I make sure that if I have this on, I try not to put this on like pavement or rocks, because if you do that and you move these around, then you are going to make holes on the bottom of them. So if you just are a little more careful, you can get away with using these inexpensive trays. At least that's been my experience. And the same applies to these type of 6-packs. There's different sizes of them. And there's ones that are deeper, there's ones that are shallow. And for sure, they can break very easily. But I try to be fairly gentle with them. And I know every year I might lose a few, especially if I give some plants to family or friends. They might end up ripping it or breaking it. It happens, but they're very inexpensive, very cheap, and I can usually get many years out of each of these. And also, I'm always asking people for them, so I can usually get them for free. And there's also a local nursery here that has basically you can drop a pot or pick up a pot, and there's always a ton of pots there. I found these type of trays, I found these type of 6-packs. So definitely ask your nursery, look around to some nurseries in your area. And then when it comes to my seed starting mix, I've made videos showing you how I make my own seed starting mix. I highly recommend that, especially if you are planning on starting a ton of seeds. If you're only going to try to grow a small amount, which is perfectly fine, then you don't need to make your own seed starting mix. It's probably, just makes more sense for you to just buy a bag of seed starting mix. And I know some people like to use potting mix when they're starting their seeds indoors. You can try that, you can experiment with it. I prefer to start with seed starting mix, and then I use the same ingredients in my seed starting mix, but then I bulk it up a little more to make more of a potting mix. And I will definitely be making more videos on that, but I have videos on my channel that show you how to make your own potting mix. I do like to sterilize my seed starting mix because oftentimes fungus gnats like to lay their eggs in the peat moss, and I do use peat moss, but you can use cocoa coir or something else that you like. I just want to try to minimize the chances of having fungus gnats in the house, so I like to sterilize it with boiling water. All right, so the next plant that we're going to talk about is Swiss chard, and I started this on January 14th, so very recently. And I also like to put down the year that was on the seed packet just because I want to know basically how viable these seeds really are. So the Swiss chard is packaged 2023, so they're fairly new. And I have that on one side of my tray. And on the other side of the tray, it looks like I have lettuce, and it was also planted on January 14th, and it's called Burgundy Delight. And the date stamp, or the year stamp, I should say, that's on it is 2022. So they're a little bit older. And you can see that there's some condensation beneath the saran wrap here. And that happens. That's because it's a very humid environment under there. And when I'm checking my seedlings every morning when I'm having my coffee, a lot of times I'll just kind of pull the sides of my saran wrap just to get some of the condensation to come off the saran wrap, but you don't have to do that. All right, I'm not going to take this fully off because then I'll remember what's on what side. So it looks like the Swiss chard has just started to come up. So what I'm going to do is show you my process basically for pricking out the Swiss chard, and I want to put it in the 6-pack. So I'm going to just change the camera angle so that you're looking a little bit more on the process rather than at me. So let me go ahead and do that next. So I'm going to use seed starting mix that's already been pre-moistened. I like to make sure that when I squeeze the seed starting mix, you can see it holds its form, but I'm squeezing it hard and no water is coming out. That means it's a perfect consistency. And if I do find any large chunks like this one, I can just take them out. I'm just pushing down lightly. One thing I really like about gardening is there are a lot of different ways you can do things to accomplish the same end goal. And I highly recommend that you do your research and then try something. And if it doesn't work, modify it. That's what I've been doing for many years during this gardening journey. And we're all still learning, which is what I think, which is what makes it beautiful. So you just want to push down, but not very hard, and just make sure that there are no air pockets in there. And the next thing I'm going to do is I like to just use a pen. I don't really need anything fancier than that. And I'm just going to make holes here where I'm planning to put the Swiss chard. And what I did when I planted the Swiss chard was I made a row here, and I believe I made one more row here. I made either 2 or 3 rows, but I think I made 2 rows. So I'm just very carefully breaking out the Swiss chard. And it definitely has a good root system to it. I like to use the back of the pen just to help it along. And oftentimes when you're growing plants, if for whatever reason, because they were reaching for the light or whatever, if they're getting leggy, you generally are okay with planting it just a little bit deeper than maybe it was in the previous container, and it should fix itself. Look at the root system on that. Pretty good. Like I mentioned, absolutely, you could plant 2 in each of these cells and just, thin it out and keep the best, strongest one, or even put 1 in each cell. You can do what works for you. I've been doing it this way for years, and I enjoy doing it this way. I find by the end of my indoor gardening experience, when it comes to starting seeds, I find that then all my cells in all my trays are filled. Unless, there's a loss along the way, that happens too. But otherwise, generally speaking, by the end, by the time I'm ready to move all my seedlings outdoors, every 6-pack is filled. So this process has worked for me, and like I said, I mentioned earlier, it's kind of like I enjoy it. It's fun for me to do it this way. So I have some really teeny tiny ones that are just barely starting to sprout. I'm not going to touch those. I'm just going to do a few of them. My goal is I don't want anything touching the saran wrap, so I'm just pulling out the ones that are the biggest ones in here. You want to be gentle when you're handling the seedlings, so I try to be very careful when I'm picking them up. You can use the back of your pen just to tamp down a little bit around it. I grew Swiss chard for the first time. It was either last year or the year before last. And to be honest with you, Swiss chard is not something that I ever ate growing up in my family. And so I really, even now in my current family with my children, we don't eat Swiss chard. But I'm trying to eat a little healthier. I want to try to start to eat a little healthier. So I'm going to start with the Swiss chard. And I think that, and plus, I think it just looks so pretty. But I'm definitely going to be looking for different ways to eat Swiss chard. Many times, if I'm going to go through the effort of doing this, I want to make sure I can at least fill a 6-pack. It doesn't always happen, but if I can, it's a good feeling. And if I only had, let's say, 5, I would just make a hole here and leave it open. And that would be a reminder that there's one extra spot available as other stuff continues to germinate. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to create a label. And I just want to, that way I remember that this is Swiss chard. So I just covered this up because there really weren't any other plants that I wanted to take out of here for now. And I'm going to go ahead and put this back under grow lights, just so that when the plants do emerge, they are hit with that nice intensive light that helps them from not being leggy. And this tray right here is going to go behind me with the other plants that I have under there as well. All right, so the next one here, there are a bunch of things that were planted in here. And everything in here was planted on January 14th. So it's only been 3 days since I planted the things in this tray. And it's a tiny tray. I mean, if you look at the size of my hand, it's very small. Again, it's a to-go container from a restaurant. And I have parsley here. And they were old seeds. So if nothing comes up, it's okay. I didn't waste a lot of time. I didn't waste a lot of room. And I wrote down that they were from 2018 over here. And then I have spinach, and those are from 2015. And the good news is now I'm done with those seeds. I've used the seeds up, and I'm pretty sure I put a ton in there just because they're old seeds. Over here we have spinach. This is 2023, so I wouldn't have put a ton in there because these seeds are newer. And then over here are cilantro, and those are from 2019. And so far in this tray, the only thing that's coming up is the spinach. That's the newer seeds from just this past year. And so far, the only thing coming up is the spinach from 2023. So we're going to go ahead and just prick out some of the spinach and put it in a 6-pack. I usually wear gardening gloves. My hands get so dry in the summer. I put cream on every day, and I do apologize. It just happens. I can't keep up with it. So I just wanted to point that out. Part of it is, I think, just having my hands in dirt all the time dries my hands out. The life of a gardener, right? So when it comes to how deep am I doing this, I basically just want it as deep as I want some of the green to be exposed on the top, but the rest of it, like the roots, should be down below the soil. And you can see that plant has a nice root system to it. I'd always rather the plant be a little bit on the deeper side than be sticking out from the soil too much, because if it's basically sticking out of the soil too much, it's already starting off kind of leggy at that point, and it has more of a likelihood of just toppling over and not making it. So I'd prefer to have it a little bit on the deeper side. So these two right here are growing very closely together. And I tried taking them apart. It wasn't easy. So I'm actually just going to plant them together and let them duke it out. And the stronger one will survive. And then I'll just cut off the one that is not as strong. These containers are pretty shallow, so I don't really have a lot of, I basically have to remove them out of the tray pretty quickly. Otherwise, they're going to hit the saran wrap. I could take the saran wrap off, but because I have a whole bunch of other plants in there, I'd rather keep the humidity in there. And so, like I said, I check this every day. I don't mind doing this. But if you don't want to check it every day, then you would want to put it in a container that's deeper so that as the plants are emerging, they're just not hitting the saran wrap. I see a couple more in here that are pretty small. Probably by tomorrow I can prick them out. So I'm just going to make 3 holes here, and that tells me that there's 3 plants and then 3 spaces for 3 additional plants. I'm going to go ahead and close this. And when I do that, I just kind of pull in all sides just to make sure that it's nice and tight. Seal around the sides. And then I'm going to label it spinach, but I'm actually going to put 2023. That way I know that this spinach came from seeds that were pretty new. And now this can go back under some grow lights that I have. So what we're looking at over here is some red zonal geraniums. I collected the seeds this past fall, and everything in here was planted on January 14th. We have sweet basil. Those are older seeds from 2018. And then we have some opal basil. And those are also older seeds from 2014. So I'm not expecting too much from the basil plants, but you can see right over there that one of the basil plants has just barely started popping up. But I'm going to wait. I'm going to give it a few more days for more plants to show up in this container here. Back under the grow lights they go. So this right here, you can see they are tiny, tiny, tiny. I got this on Amazon and I don't remember how many cells were in the, it's basically a tray that was a 10 by 20 tray, and it had all these cells in it, hundreds of them. But what I found was I never really utilized it the way that I wanted to. In other words, I've used this type of tray where it was the big size 10 by 20 sheet, and I put wax begonias in them. And I'll pop up on the screen what they look like when I did that a few years ago. It worked out okay. I didn't love that. I found that I didn't need that many small little cells all at once. Also, when it came to watering, it just wasn't the best situation for bottom watering the small little cell, the small little tray. So what I asked Mr. Budget Gardener to do for me was to basically cut it into small bite-sized morsels. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, which is great because for today, I really only want to play with 1. Now, I like this size of cell tray, I guess you can call it, because you can put really, really small plants in something like this. I don't grow Lysianthus. I've tried it before. I'm not a big fan, but if I was growing Lysianthus, I would say that this would be a great thing to use for Lysianthus. However, I love using this for begonia plants because begonia seeds, when they germinate, the seedlings are tiny. So we're going to go ahead and fill this with seed starting mix. So I've gone ahead and filled this tray with the pre-moistened seed starting mix. And over here are the wax begonias, the white colored flower, large green leaves. And yes, I am wearing reading glasses while doing this process because they are so small. I could leave them in here and let them grow bigger, but I'm ready to move not all of them, but some of them out of here into this tray here. So we can go ahead and I'll just make a hole here, one here, and I'm very carefully going to prick out one plant. And clearly we're not going to do this whole process of filling this whole tray together. I just want to do a few with you just so you can see what I do for this. It takes patience, I tell you, but you wait until the summertime when I have all these begonias around my yard, and then I'll show you this video and we can laugh together. I could probably get away with using a toothpick or something. The main thing is to make sure that the little plant has good contact with the soil. And I'm sure you can't see it. I mean, it's so small. And that's why it's important for you to just follow along with the journey and get updates. Just using the pen. And the big thing is, again, I want to make sure that I am pushing down on that little seedling. Now, it's very, very important to keep this soil moist because what's going to happen is now that I'm taking the little seedlings out of here and putting them in here, this tray is going to get dry very fast. So until these little guys get stronger and bigger, they are going to need that extra water as this dries out pretty much every day. And I'll keep track and I'll let you know how many times I have to water this. Hopefully it's only once a day. That's another reason why, to be honest with you, most of these will stay in here for a while. I just wanted to show you what the plan is in case you were wondering. Maybe you started begonia seeds when I did and you're like, what do I do next? If I were you, I'd wait a little bit longer for them to get a little bit bigger. But if you did want to move them out, you have to do it very carefully. And I recommend you put them in like a small little type of tray like this. So what I like to do is like kind of push down on the soil maybe, and then make the little hole. So there's 3 there, right there. I'm not going to go any further. I'm going to leave it as is. And you know, I think it's actually a good experiment for me to just leave these guys, just 3, and see how they fare. Will they do okay on their own or will they not? I don't want to lose all my begonias. So I'd rather just see how these ones do and then check the moisture level. But then I'm going to close this one back up and keep in the moisture and let these guys keep growing on. But I just wanted to give you a quick update on the begonias and, you know, what are the next steps, even if the next steps aren't for another few weeks. I just felt bad because I hadn't shown you an update on my wax begonias, and I just wanted to show you what the begonias are looking like. And there they are, the 3 amigos. 1, 2, and 3. Sink or swim, little buddies. Let's see how you do. They look so small. But there they are. So the plants that we just worked with are here now. And I took a 10 by 20 tray, put it upside down so that I could bring these plants a little bit closer to the lights. You usually want your plants to be about 2 to 3 inches below the lights So these plants are fine. My little begonia seeds that are down there probably should get lifted up as well. I could find something and just put them on top of it inside of this tray just to lift them up. But this should work for now. So the next thing we're going to do is start some Brussels sprouts. Now, when I was growing up as a kid, we ate a lot of Indian food, and the Indian food typically didn't involve any Brussels sprouts. So I didn't eat any as a kid. And a couple of times when I've gone to restaurants, I've ordered roasted Brussels sprouts, and they're very yummy. I really like them. So that's one of the new things I'm trying for this year. I want to give it a shot. And so I did a little bit of research on it, and I think I can do it. I think I can grow it. And if not, I tried. So what I bought was these particular seeds, and they are the Long Island improved Brussels sprouts. And it was $2.29, so I figured it's worth a try by Botanical Interests. And the one thing that I learned about them is that they actually require a long amount of time from seed until they produce anything. So it says here that it's recommended to plant these 4 to 6 weeks before transplanting outside, about 4 months before your average first fall date, so the sprouts can mature in the cool weather. Well, here in New Hampshire, generally speaking, our weather is cool. Even our summers are not as hot as many of you maybe that live down south. And it says here when to sow outside 4 months before your average first fall frost. So what I was thinking of doing with these, because part of me feels like, oh, okay, well, if that's the case, should I be starting these a little bit later on? Well, I mean, I have nothing to lose. I want to try some of them now. And then I think what I'm going to do is plant some of these within maybe in a few more months just to see. So it does say for maturity, 85 to 110 days. So I feel like I should be able to hopefully get a spring crop out of these and then even a fall crop out of these. But you know, this will be a learning year for me. I've never done this, so I'm looking forward to trying these. So we're gonna fill up a tray like this again with seed starting mix. Have you ever grown Brussels sprouts? And what's been your experience? Do you grow them this time of year? Do you wait until later, like early summer? I'd love to know what your experience has been with Brussels sprouts because it's new for me. And maybe when my kids come home from college, even they might be able to try some of the Brussels sprouts and I can convince them that how good they are for them. Okay, so it says here it takes 5 to 10 days for the seedlings to emerge, to plant the seeds 1/4 of an inch. And other than that, I'm not really going to read any of the other information because it mostly pertains to if I was planting this outside. And then it also says the optimal soil temperature for germination is 60 to 85 degrees. So that tells me that these don't have to go in a heat mat. If it specifically said that they need to be like 70 to 75 degrees, but the fact that they can even germinate at 60 degrees tells me that they don't need a heat mat. So I'm going to try it without the heat mat and we'll see how we do. And there is a lot of information in the inside of the seed packet, as is the case with many of the Botanical Interest seeds. So just keep that in mind if you do buy any seeds from Botanical Interest. Because this is my first year growing this plant, I am not going to plant all the seeds right now. There's plenty in there. Probably in my hand right now, I would say there's maybe 20 seeds here. So that's more than enough. And I'm just sprinkling them. Because again, the intent is that I can then prick the plants out as they get bigger and put them into their own 6-packs. And then it said to cover them with about 1/4 of an inch of potting mix or seed starting mix. And I've mentioned this in previous videos. Don't get terribly hung up on that. Just know that they need to be covered per the instructions, and you don't want to put too much potting mix or seed starting mix on them. just enough. So I'm pushing down so that there's good contact between the seeds and the soil. And even though this is already pre-moistened, I will give it a little bit of water. And I have my water sprayer here. So the next thing I'm going to do is just cover this with saran wrap. And I'm going to label it. So it's Brussels sprouts. And today's date is January 17th. And since seeds do not require a heat mat, although they could go on a heat mat for sure, but I'm going to choose not to put them on a heat mat. I'm going to put them on one of the grow light stands behind me, but with the lights turned off for right now. And I'll keep you posted when these do sprout. I can take you along when it's time to prick them out and put them in their own 6-packs. So even though it's winter, I've been busy. There has still been so much for me to do. In the garage, I'm overwintering a ton of plants. I have mums out there. I have my dahlias. I have peacock orchids. I have calla lilies. I have canna lilies. And then I have a whole bunch of annuals that are not hardy to my zone, but they are overwintering just fine in the garage. So about every few weeks, I check on everything. I also make sure that if they need water, I give them water. I make sure that if anything is rotting, that I remove those items so that the rot doesn't spread. I even have spring bulbs that are potted up that are out there that are already sprouting. We had some very mild days for here in New Hampshire, and now it's freezing cold pretty much everywhere, including here. And so hopefully that slows down the progress of those bulbs. And what I'm thinking of doing, actually, I'll give you a tour and show you what everything's doing out there. I showed you in December, but we're overdue. I'd like to show you how everything's looking in case you're also overwintering any plants like I am. But some of my spring bulbs that sprouted very early in the pots, my sister-in-law gave me this idea. So thank you, Jen. She mentioned about getting some grow lights and putting them out there for those particular bulbs that have already started to sprout. And I think I like her idea. I'm going to steal that idea because I don't want the greenery that's coming up through the dirt to, it needs light at this point. It needs photosynthesis. And so I probably will end up doing that. Just putting one thing of LED shop lights out there. Costs about $20, totally worth it. So I will be giving you a tour on what's going on out there. I also have some amaryllis bulbs indoors. I've been watering those. They should be blooming hopefully within the next few weeks. But once the amaryllis bulbs are done blooming, I'll let you know what the next steps are. So if you received amaryllis bulbs as, let's say, a Christmas present, don't throw them out. You want to find out what to do next so that you have those same amaryllis bulbs blooming for you again in the future. In my basement, I have the dormant geraniums. And before you know it, it's going to be time to wake those guys up, get them potted up, and I'll be showing you how to do that. My dahlias will need to be pre-sprouted. There's just so many things that are going on. It's a wonderful time of year. And then on top of that, all the seeds that we still have to start indoors. So be on the lookout for those videos. I hope that you're also able to get your hands a little bit dirty when it comes to gardening. And until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.